On September 6, 1949, the Eskimos played the Calgary Stampeders. The Stampeders won 20-6 before 10,000 fans. But that would be the beginning of one of the most successful and dominating sports franchises in the history of our country. In 1949, there was no way to know that the Edmonton Eskimos were to become one of the CFL's all-time great organizations. In 1949, they didn't know the Eskimos would play in 15 Grey Cup championships over the next 40 years. They didn't know the Edmonton Eskimos would have 10 championship seasons. In 1949, Edmonton just wanted to get a football team. Anna Stukas was the first coach of the Edmonton Eskimos, and in their first year, the Eskimos won 4 games, lost 10, and finished 3rd in the Western Interprovincial Football Union. In 1952, Frank Filchok took over as coach of the team. They had 9 wins, 6 losses, and a tie. They finished 2nd and went on to lose to the Toronto Argonauts in the 1952 Grey Cup Classic in Toronto. Darrell Royal took over the coaching reins in 1953. With Billy Vessels in the backfield, the Eskimos won 12 games, lost 4, and finished in first place. But they lost a heartbreaking playoff game to Winnipeg. Frank Pop Ivy began his coaching career with the Eskimos in 1954, and that was to be the beginning of the first Eskimo dynasty. The Eskimos won 3 consecutive Grey Cup titles in 1954, 55, and 56. 1954 was Jackie Parker's first year in the Canadian League, and he highlighted his season with one of the most famous plays in the history of the Grey Cup. Parker recovered a Chuck Hunsinger fumble late in the game and ran the ball back for an Eskimo upset win over the Montreal Alouettes. It was the first of 3 straight wins over Montreal, and the city of Edmonton was in love with its Eskimos. In 1957, the Edmonton Eskimos were confident they would play in their 4th consecutive Grey Cup final. They finished the season with 14 wins and only 2 losses. But the Eskimos were upset in the playoffs by Winnipeg, and that turned out to be the final year for Pop Ivy as the Eskimos head coach. Sam Lyle coached the Eskimos in 1958. They finished the season with 9 wins, 6 losses, and a tie. In 1959, Eagle Keys, a longtime Eskimo center, took over as head coach. He would keep the job for 5 years. Keys took the Eskimos to the 1960 Grey Cup final, but the Eskimos were beaten by the Ottawa Rough Riders. The 1960s would turn out to be the poorest decade in the 40-year history of the Eskimos. Eagle Keys was fired at the end of the '63 season. Neil Armstrong was hired to coach the Eskimos. Nice Neil, as he would later be named, coached the Green and Gold for 6 years. It would be a period of struggle for the Eskimos, and it would be an emotional departure for Neil Armstrong at the end of the 1969 season. Ray Yauch was to be the next Eskimos head coach. He had been a long-time assistant with Armstrong. Yauch would coach the Eskimos for 7 seasons, and he would enjoy great success. In 1972, the Eskimos won 10 and lost 6. They were beaten in the playoffs, but that season was the beginning of another dynasty. Midway through the '72 season, they would acquire quarterback Bruce Lemmerman. He had played in the NFL with Atlanta. In the offseason, they would also claim a chubby, tobacco-chewing quarterback named Tom Wilkinson. Together, Wilkinson and Lemmerman began a very successful 2-quarterback system. They took the Eskimos to 3 consecutive Grey Cups. They lost in '73 and '74, but they won in the cold in Calgary in 1975. In 1976, the Eskimos would lose to the Saskatchewan Roughriders in the Western Conference Final, and that would be the end of the Ray Yauch era as head coach of the Edmonton Eskimos. In 1977, Hugh Campbell became the Eskimos' head man, and the next year, the Eskimos would move into their new home, Commonwealth Stadium in Edmonton. When Hugh Campbell took over as the Eskimos coach in 1977, he had a good football team. He would build that team into the most dominating team in the history of the Canadian Football League. Hugh Campbell would coach the Eskimos for 6 seasons. They would play in 6 consecutive Grey Cup championship games. They would win 5 consecutive Grey Cup titles, a feat that may never again be equaled in the CFL.
When I came here, it was kind of a rebuilding situation. Both Norm Kimball and Ray Ock had told me that there were going to have to be a lot of changes, and that's why they had gone outside the organization for a coach with a fresh approach.
In 1978, the Eskimos moved from Clark Stadium into Commonwealth Stadium. What were your memories of that time?
Well, the very first game, my memories are how quiet it was. I think our fans felt, you know, they were going into a new place and they were going to have to be well behaved or something, because it was real quiet. I felt like we were playing on a neutral site instead of a home field. But it didn't take long till we turned that Commonwealth into our home field. But the very first day, I think it was more of just a neutral field.
It must have been exciting playing in the big stadium.
It really was a great feeling. It had a major league atmosphere, appearance, and of course going to 44,000 fans from Clark Stadium was a big jump, and it was a good thrill. I think our players enjoyed it, and as time went by and that really became our stadium, it was even a bigger thrill as the crowd got noisier and noisier.
When you first saw Warren Moon, did you know he was going to be a great player?
Well, the first time I saw him was playing in university, and I felt that he had a great chance to be a star in Canada. At that time, he ran the ball a little more than he actually ended up doing it in professional football, and so I knew he could take off and run with it. And his arm was so strong and so accurate that I just thought the big field would be a great place for him to develop his skills further. And the thing I didn't know when I first saw him was how intelligent he was. And that was the kind of the extra thing we got after we started visiting with him. Both myself and Joe Farrelly went down to visit with him, and at different times, and we both came back with the pleasant surprise that he was going to be an extraordinary intellectual quarterback, as well as all the skills that he had God-given skills.
1982 was Hugh Campbell's last year as the Eskimos head coach. He left the team for the U.S. Football League and then went on to Houston of the National Football League. He would subsequently return as the Eskimos general manager. In 1983, Pete Catella was named head coach. He was fired midway through the season. And Jackie Parker became the 11th modern-day coach of the Edmonton Eskimos. In 1983, 84, and 85, the Eskimos would lose in the conference playoffs. They advanced to the 1986 Grey Cup and were beaten. In 1987, Jackie Parker had to resign his coaching position because of health reasons. Joe Farrelly took over as the head coach, and the Edmonton Eskimos went on to win their 10th Grey Cup championship. In 1988, they lost again in the conference finals, and they are today preparing for another season. Over the years, the Eskimos have been a big part of the city of Edmonton, a source of pride to a lot of citizens. And over the years, the Eskimos have received outstanding support. This year, there are at least a couple of dozen season ticket holders that first purchased tickets in 1949. Mrs. Bessie Gibbons is one of those long-time supporters. She has been attending Eskimo games for 40 years. She and her late husband, John, were at Clark Stadium in 1949. Mrs. Gibbons, you've been going to football games since 1949 involving the Eskimos here in Edmonton. I'm sure when you think back to the first season in 1949, it must have been a very exciting year for you.
Well, it truly was, because I was, as I say, we got to know some of the players, and that made it doubly exciting. Because I think when you know somebody, or I feel you know someone, it makes it more interesting. And we knew everybody, you know, Edmonton, small city at that time, and you knew everybody that went to the games, everyone.
Over the years, over the 40 years, there of course have been a lot of nights, I'm sure, when the weather was really bad. Do you have one that sticks out in your mind that was really uncomfortable?
Well, the only one, and I can't think what year that might have been, was that year that it snowed so bad, and we went anyway. And they were playing in the snow. It must have been a foot deep, you know. And, it was just a fun thing as far as we were concerned.
Who was your all-time favorite Eskimo player?
Well, I rather think that I liked Rolly Miles. He was always so fantastic.
And you're looking forward to the 1989 season?
Yes, I am. I see they're going to have, they're getting a few new players in there. And I'm rather happy about the quarterback, the one who they got on as first place now. Our quarterback we're having this year.
Oh, Tracy Ham?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I rather could see a lot of things that could, you know, that he could come a long way.
Over the last 4 decades, the Canadian Football League has had good times and bad times. Through it all, the Eskimos have been solid members of the league. The Eskimos' history is filled with many great moments, and as they prepare for another season, it's reasonable to assume there will be many great moments ahead of them.